Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Durrani, and I'm your host. Mike Skrypnek, it's so good to see you.
Hey, Drew, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I have to thank you for getting up early. I know you're on the West Coast over in Canada. So you're 7 a.m. And we're 10 a.m. Eastern time here in New Jersey. So I do appreciate you making time for us, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I always like to thank the person who introduced me to my guest. So Jennifer Regular, you get a shout out. So thank you so much for introducing me to Mike. I certainly know why you did. So I appreciate that. So my audience knows that in the beginning, I always talk about how we're taught when we're young that life is linear. It's a straight line, that if we do A plus B plus C, D is going to happen. And it's not a malicious thinking. They wish it for us. They hope it for us. They pray it for us. And for the most part, life is linear until it's not. Ultimately, an external circumstance will get in the way of one of those letters and create that more circuitous route. And that, when something gets in between those letters, obviously we call it adversity. And we either see the adversity or we don't see the adversity. And if we do see it, we have a choice to take it head on or to walk away from it or back away from it. And with that, I believe there's three types of men. The man who doesn't see it, man number one. Man number one's got a ton of blind spots. He doesn't see the adversity. He's living life the way he was told to live it. He's on autopilot, and he doesn't change a thing in his life. I don't have man number one on this show. Then you have man number two. Now, man number two sees the adversity, yet he considers the adversity a barrier, not an opportunity. He says, I'm the victim. Everything else is to blame. I can't change life. Life's doing this to me, and I don't change anything. It is what it is. And on his deathbed, man number two's got a ton of regrets. And I don't bring man number two on this show. I bring man number three on this show, like Mike Skrypnek. Man number three has a heightened self awareness. He sees the adversity and he says, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That adversity is not a barrier, it's an opportunity to do something different, take massive action, and become a stronger man on the other side. So, with that, Mike, let us know go back as far as you need to for that defining moment in life, whether it was that tap on the shoulder, the whisper in the ear, or like what I needed, the 2x4 upside my head. It kind of transformed you from the man you were, whether it was one, two, or both, to the man you are today, and how that transformation impacted you personally and professionally.
Drew, it's kind of interesting. I would say there are two distinct points. There was a point where I had a linear view of life, but that was unfettered, unlimited, nothing but potential. And I saw my future in, Technicolor, and I was 11 years old.
Right.
And a major incident occurred around that point that derailed it. And then man number two kind of began to exist in all the glory of all the barriers. Only it wasn't barriers that he ignored, it was barriers he didn't see. And I'll explain that maybe later as well. And then there was the life altering moment, which almost was life removing, unfortunately, 4 years ago. And that incident is truly what helped me level up as a human being. Although, from a distance, from the outside looking in, anyone might say, "Oh, he's been doing amazing," and yet no one knew. And so the period of time in September of 2021, falling after 18 months of my business, basically slowly but surely collapsing in on itself, the pressures of finance and just isolation that was as a result of the pandemic, kind of weighed in heavier than I could bear. And for 10 days during that period of time, we're currently in an absolute downpour season. It's raining like crazy. It was raining like crazy back then. And every day I would walk, I would fake it on a Zoom call, get through that call or two, I would hit the couch or hit my bed or go out for a walk. And for 10 days, starting with one key day when I looked into the river that was raging, and I said, today's the day I do this. The day's the day I throw myself in. Today is the day my worries and stresses all go away. And I did that walk for 10 days. And that walk, didn't change other than I would come home and make a few notches on my pros and cons list, double check my insurance, and consider whether or not the next day would be the day. And in my own way, I pushed the decision to make a final decision off until another day.
Mm.
And then one day, my wife had come home from her work and she reflected that she was worried about me. And I said I was definitely having challenges. And I hadn't told her. And I did this walk on my own. And she was concerned because she was worried that the next day she would show up, that I wouldn't be there. And we hadn't discussed this.
Oh, wow.
And so I took that moment and that point in time and made an outreach to someone I knew that could help. That was a psychologist and a great friend. And you mentioned getting hit upside the head with a stick. Well, this was a wonderful woman who was part of my life for a very long time, and we had a great relationship. And between the care and the love that a person close to you would provide, she also threw me a life preserver. But it wasn't just flotation device; it was hit upside the head with that life preserver, and so thus began my trajectory out of that moment. And I had to realize and reconcile why I was there. What got me to that moment that there was no way I would ever want to go back.
Mhm.
But how do I fix it? How do I dig in to find out what it was that got me into that moment in the first place? Because it sure wasn't just another financial period, or it wasn't just isolation. I'd been through all kind. I mean, I was in the investment business for 20 years and then coaching for another almost decade by that
Right.
point. And it certainly I'd lost a lot of money. I made a lot of I did a lot, right? And those moments didn't seem to crush me. So what was it about this? And so I dug in to understand that overstressor, and it all came back to that 11-year-old boy.
Tell us a little more about that 11-year-old boy, and the parallels between the 11-year-old boy and who you were at the time that you were looking in that raging river.
That's funny. At 10, 11 years old, somewhere in there, I don't know what that was, what grade five, grade six. And it was probably grade six, and I was my parents had someone come in and do a test, and because they were wondering where my middle school would be.
Okay.
And I didn't talk about this much, but I was selected for a gifted school.
Oh, wow.
And yet my parents had little means financially, and my mom had a definite belief that that may not provide me the social surroundings that I might need, and opportunities. Is very athletic, very busy, very engaged, and yet she was concerned that maybe that would be an isolating place where people who don't actually develop their full selves, they just develop the gift or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So it was that moment where also though the sky was the limit. There was everything was possible. And I excelled at everything at that point. And who knew what lied in store.
Right.
And then there was a moment where I was involved in a choir, and I was selected for a soloist role. At that point in my life, I think I wanted to be a doctor more than anything.
Right.
And I was selected for a soloist role. And the man who led the choir, who led the community, who led the boys, who people handed their kids off to, abused me. And he was abusing other people for years. And it was that moment that somehow embedded itself. I mean, you would imagine that that would be a traumatic thing, but it was
Right.
something that was also buried by that 11-year-old boy for another 8 or 9 years,
Right.
not to think about, not to discuss, not to even have on the surface. But it was the kind of incident that created some wiring that became part of my subconscious and my behaviors and the patterns I lived through my life that fast forwarding 40 years into a moment where you go, how did I get here?
Mm.
How did, and you look back and you go, my goodness, repeated these kind of basic multi-year periods of time in my life, and then it was transition and restart. And I had to figure that out. I had to understand what was it about that moment, even though I had put it out of my mind, and anyone would who didn't know, because it was a secret as well, so it was eating me alive, right?
Of course.
Um, would otherwise say, man, if they knew, they would go, that guy's a success, like he's overcome
Hmm.
something. But the reality was I never dealt with something.
Right.
And it was just chewing away at my potential. And, in its sense, it created this cap, this limit. So no matter what, it seemed I was destined to recreate instances or patterns of living,
Hmm.
and those patterns created challenges for me, very simply. So there I was, 51. I'm starting to dig into this. I'm
No,
looking
it's
and
important. Yeah.
yeah, I'm looking like what's going on. And in that moment, I realized that what it was a number of things that were designed to protect that kid.
Mm.
And those things that are instincts that get wired into us to preserve our lives so that we can provide and procreate and do what our DNA wants us to do
Right.
ultimately. Um, those things are very powerful, and they're subconscious. They're not designed to be in our consciousness, because if we thought too much about the snake in front of us, we'd
Mm.
probably end up dead.
Right.
And so what were these things? And one of them was never trust a good man, because it was the pillar of the community
Right. Right.
who abused me. And that had been subconsciously wired, and thus somehow thwarted relationships with men over my lifetime
Mm.
in ways that I never understood. Sometimes it was creating a conflict that didn't really exist,
Mm.
or repelling somebody that I really wish I would be able to work with or would mentor me.
Right.
But then being attracted to men who I could see that they were flawed, that they weren't the best guys in the room, but I could manage that somehow.
Okay.
And when the hit the wall,
Mhm.
um, when it hit the fan, those men's flaws were bigger than all of us, and I was so close I'd always go down with their ship, if you will. And
Wow.
thus another transition, another loss, another financial loss, and whatever it was. And so it accumulated over a lifetime, and there I was digging in and going, oh my gosh, this exists. And the work that I did suddenly brought it to the consciousness of my mind,
Okay.
and it just vanished. And it was no longer part of my limitations, of the potential that I had, and I never seemed to realize. And when I became free or unshackled of it, it opened up unlimited worth or unlimited potential. And I've been living in that unlimited space ever since.
That's wonderful. Did you ever tell anybody what happened?
I had at one point, I was 19
Yeah.
and I was in university.
Yeah.
I was having some challenges with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I said, it's me, not you, must be me.
Hmm.
And I went and saw a counselor.
Okay.
And I went to a university counselor, and that counselor looked at me, or did whatever they did with you at the time, and they said, we can't go back and get the guy, like there's a statute on this. At the time, 8 years seemed like an eternity
Right.
in the 80s. And yet you seem okay. You've got great grades, you're socially adjusted, by all accounts you're looking good. So we don't think there's much we can do for you.
Hmm.
So I packaged it up,
Oh, okay.
wrapped it in a little bow,
Yeah.
and buried it and continued on. And for me, it was,
Hmm.
part of the experience was that I learned to be independent. I didn't count on anybody. I didn't rely on other people. I became fiercely independent and would just
Right.
charge ahead. And it was easy for me to put bad experiences behind me, because that's what I did initially, right? Is
Okay.
so I could plow forward and drive my business or drive my aspirations in any direction, but I drove hard.
Right.
And between relationships and alcohol, I would numb it, and between working and being extreme and working out and pursuing goals, all those things combined to sedate the feelings of guilt and shame I had. But those weren't conscious. None of that was a
No.
conscious thing,
Right.
you know? And so my early 20s were kind of invested in anything I could do to just move forward.
So that relationship, did that get better or did that not get better after the seeing the therapist at the school?
It went as your early year
Let
relationships
you
do
go.
go.
Okay.
It ran its natural course. We
Yeah.
were, the introspection was probably a lot more because we weren't compatible to that point in the first place. So the
Right, right, right.
irritation was there was a disconnect anyways, but
Mm.
at least it got me going. But so looking back and as a 51-year-old man back, 4 years ago, and now I'm in my mid 50s.
Right,
And I'm going, how do I help men? How do I help men recognize these things? How do I
right,
bring these things to light? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be an elephant in the room incident. It
right,
can be
exactly.
other forms of
Something
innocuous
small. Right.
seeming
Mm-hmm.
events. And but yet they wire themselves into our brains so that we behave a certain way to, again, provide, protect, procreate, move
Right,
on.
right.
And I had an opportunity where no one around me understood the gravity of the situation,
Mm-hmm.
and thus no one gave me a path to heal.
Right.
And I suggest that maybe I didn't need to get to the walk of despair for 10 days, considering ending my life, leaving my wife, leaving my family,
Right.
leaving my trauma on the backs and burden of everybody else, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Maybe
Yeah.
we could do this while we're, in a typical setting, where we're not overly stressed, but we're being introspective, and we can go,
Right.
we can fix this. We can fix this and remove all those limitations that you think you have, that you
Right.
perceive
Right.
exist, that for some reason you keep knocking your head against a wall
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, either relationships, personal, professional, that you can actually go in and navigate your brain in a way that you can
Right.
change that pattern
Right. And
and
you don't
remove
go
them
alone.
from.
You don't have to do it
Yeah,
alone. No, you don't
you,
have to do
you
it
don't
alone.
have to.
Right.
You don't have to.
Thank goodness your wife just sensed something and felt strong enough to reach out to you and let you know what she was feeling. She gave you some vulnerability there that you could have just buried it, but you acknowledged you were going through some stuff. So it's great to have a partner who can, have that intuition and then actually call you on it and you be comfortable enough to say, "Yeah, I'm going through some stuff."
Yeah, Drew, you work with your platform is about caregivers.
Right,
And as a male, as a provider, as the person who had the larger paycheck and the bigger impact financially,
right,
I felt that I had a big responsibility to protect,
right,
and it was being put in jeopardy by all the situations. And so
right,
therefore, that protect and provide, nurture kind of thing that I had going on, was in jeopardy. And so
right.
I was at my weakest and my most vulnerable. And my wife was a person who did know my secret. And
Mm,
she's one of the only people in the world. And, but she didn't understand the gravity of it.
right,
And when we discussed it, we agreed that it's probably the thing that I should dig into first.
right.
And I couldn't have moved forward without those moments where I knew my wife, my one person who I loved and trusted,
Hmm.
that more than anything in the world, that I
Right.
could have the confidence to share that vulnerability. And we all need to identify who that person might be, because to step
Absolutely.
forward, it's one thing for the moment a man says, I think I have a challenge.
Yeah.
That's the 5 alarm fire. It's not I thinking about throwing myself in the river.
Right.
It's I think I'm struggling with something.
Yeah.
Like that's the time, because a
Ab-
man wants to talk at that moment. He
Absolutely.
just doesn't understand if the risk is too great with
Hmm.
the person he's just about to share with. So if we
Absolutely.
find that person in our lives, we suddenly have that moment to give up that concern, that view that we have of risk. And for
Absolutely.
me, that began a process of then leading to a person or a professional that I trusted, who wasn't the person who provided the therapy, quite frankly. It was a
Okay.
different person. It wasn't
Interesting.
the person that could help me at the moment was the right person, but she was the wrong person to work through the therapy part.
Right.
I
Exactly. Right.
needed a young man. I
Yeah.
needed a man who I could trust, a good
Right.
man. and
Right.
someone to navigate that with me. And I found a young, young mid-30s man,
Yeah.
um, who could help. And so an interesting dynamic though that was going on at the time, Drew, was when we talk about caregivers, was a
Yeah.
dynamic at home. We all were challenged by the pandemic, no
Of
question.
course. Absolutely.
Our son had been in his first year racing downhill mountain bikes in Europe
Oh boy.
for World Cup during that
Oh,
period.
jeez.
And so he was an elite athlete at the highest level in his first year ever, in a rookie season.
Wow.
And I had gone with him earlier that year to Europe for 5 glorious weeks. And that was in June. And by September, I was at home trying to figure out how to pay for him to get back from Europe.
Oh boy. Yeah.
We were coming up with capital to pay for the flights and whatever travel needs he had. And he was entering grade 12 at the time and considering what he's going to do for university. And so
Mm.
and prior to my challenge, he had had a massive crash.
Oh no.
And so he's in Italy in August, recovering in the hospital from a crash that was viral on video, and we could do nothing. And so he came back with a very different outlook in terms of he was troubled about where maybe he could go, how
Yeah.
alone he felt. And my son comes into this environment so focused on what he's going to do for school and he's breaking up with a girlfriend. And there I was completely paralyzed in my own life.
Wow.
And so we had an interesting dynamic
Yeah.
where he needed me, but he was so preoccupied, and I needed him, but I was not there. And while I shared what was going on with my wife, while I shared with the therapist, while I even had a chance to talk to our older daughter about this,
Right.
there was my son. He did not know, and he did not care. To be honest, he was busy
Yeah.
mentally.
And it was not malicious either. He was wrapped up in
No,
whatever.
no, no.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was wrapped up in his thing, and
Yeah.
I was there, but I wasn't.
Yeah. I've
And
been
it
there.
took me 3 weeks longer to have a conversation with him and go into his room
Hmm.
and say, to our son, I said, son, this is what I'm going through. And this is
Yeah.
what was going on with me. And this is why. And I shared with him
Yeah.
my secret. I said, this is what
Yeah.
happened to me.
Yeah.
And because I wanted to or learn if he had had any, as a parent, you always like, did it ever happen to you? Or,
Yeah. Oh
those
yeah.
things. And I was relieved to know that that wasn't his life experience.
Good. Yeah.
And I was worried, as a man would be, telling his, at the time, 17-year-old son, that, this happened to me.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tell your son you were raped, it's not your
No.
thing.
No.
And yet he looked at me and he just said, I got you, you know.
Yeah.
Holy crap. 5 years later, I'm still, 4 years
Yes.
later, I tear up about this
Of
stuff.
course.
But that's what it means to give care
Yep.
is, and in
Absolutely.
in a man's lens, when we know the people closest to us or
Mhm.
somebody in our
Mhm.
lives has our back
Yep.
unconditionally,
Mm-hmm.
then we can heal.
Yes.
And
100%. Yep.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
make that a point. I
Yeah.
have something called Men Worth Mentoring, which is a mentorship and coaching program.
Okay.
And in my life, I was always been a coach, but I never really understood a certain aspect of it. And
Right.
so until this crisis, I was a great coach who could give a lot of input and support people and help people be vulnerable, but I was never vulnerable.
Right.
And I didn't understand the connection. And since that time, um, it's elevated my coaching and my involvement with people. That truly, when I enter a relationship with anybody, professionally or personally,
Mm-hmm.
I don't take the idea that I've got their back lightly. I make
Right.
sure
Yep.
that they know it.
That's awesome.
And because it's the thing that can move us forward. When we feel that we always have a fallback,
Yeah.
us guys can figure out, we can take some vulnerability and put it on the table and
Mm-hmm.
say, here, I'm laid bare. Now I feel that I've got someone who's got me. I
Mm-hmm.
can move forward. And so when I consider how I give care to others, that's a key element, is letting them know and living it, not just saying it. Lip service
Right.
about
Living
having
it.
someone's back. Like so many people say, I got you, or I got your back. And they don't mean it.
Mm-mm.
They really mean, until it's inconvenient for me, I'm not gonna, I've got you,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Right.
I don't mean it that way. When it's inconvenient is probably when I'll be there the most.
Yeah, that's, I mean, they believe it when they say it, and then when push comes to shove, yeah, and a lot of people don't stick around. I love the name of the project, the Unlimited Worth Project. And did you get that from stemming back from that child who had unlimited potential, looking at the gift school and all that?
Yeah, I mean, when a man is on his knees,
Yeah.
we feel worthless.
Mm-hmm.
I felt useless, hopeless. Like one of the reasons I didn't throw myself in the river because I would fail at it. I probably would live,
Jeez.
you know,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to be another failure
Mm-hmm.
again. I couldn't fail at that.
Right.
So that sense of worthlessness in those moments and limitation that you're continually butting up against and you
Yeah.
know it, you just can't put your finger on it. I was standing here in a front room of our house trying to figure out what I would call what I was going to do next.
Right.
And it came up, I felt unworth, and what I
Oh.
realized was all of my worth to trust
Mm.
that I'll be okay.
Right.
And I'm worthy to start. And that was key. And then the removal of these patterns and this and digging in created this sense of a lifting of all of that.
I
And
love
so I
that.
felt unlimited in my
Unlimited
worth,
worth.
and unlimited
Yeah.
worth then became the
You
thing.
know, it's may sound weird, but it's like the limitation you put on yourself because of the fear of failure kind of saved your life.
Certainly,
Which
like
is,
there's three
Mhm.
things. Like I looked at my family and I said, I can't do that to
All right. Well,
them,
they're good. Let's
right?
put the emphasis on that. But it was
Right.
kind of interesting that
Yeah,
yeah,
but there's also an optimist in me. I still
yeah,
had this glimmer of hope, like that
yeah.
at the end of the tunnel, it
That's what
wasn't a
saved you.
train, it was like
Yeah,
the sun. And I thought at least the sun will beat at the end of the
yeah,
tunnel. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
the fear of failing
yeah.
at the worst possible thing
Right.
you can imagine at the
Yeah.
time, yeah, that kept me from doing it.
All right. Hey, you're here, and thank God you're here. Tell us a little about how you let's give me a great feel good story of how you helped one of your clients, your male clients.
So even though I came up, it felt like I was in the right groove
Yeah.
with Unlimited Worth, and I was quick to write a book and start a
Mhm.
podcast and really get
Right.
behind it.
Right.
It's been a few years of mid taking contracts and being distracted from the project itself
Okay.
and being all in it. I was kind of
Right.
in on the periphery.
Right.
And only this fall was I clear to be able to really say, well, I'm in. There's
Mhm.
no other path for me but to be all in. And I was trying to figure out what it is that connects that with what I was doing. And it's this term to transform lives through tangible actions. I think what I witnessed over the last few years is all these well-intentioned people are just part of the noise. And they're actually not changing lives when they get in contact with
Right.
them.
Right.
And so, how do I do that? Well, part of my mentorship and coaching, part of psychological first aid training, and part of peer support, commercial level peer support work that we do, that changes lives. And it
Mhm.
changes lives of either the person giving care or the person receiving it. And it does
Right.
it in the moment.
Right. Right. Right.
I have these young men that I put into my subsidized version. It's a pay it forward version of coaching that is an executive coaching, but for a very affordable access, right? And these young guys are they're partners in a business, and they're just on the precipice of making it, but they're
Mm.
struggling so
Right.
hard. And the place we live is one of the most expensive places in the planet. Like our
Right.
cost of living is crazy high, and they're struggling with it. Young families, they're just ready to abandon it at any moment, and the pressure is killing them.
Mm.
And I've been going through this process of coaching with them, and we had a moment where one decided that he was done,
Oh wow.
and he's just throwing in the towel. They couldn't agree. He was struggling, and so we had to dig in. And so we've had many conversations that are poignant and straight to the point. And there's no risk for him. He can be as vulnerable as he wants, and he gets a path of recommendation or suggestion. and yet they were still struggling. And we had this group meeting, and their dynamic is terrible, and it was just not a productive couple of hours. Like, it was just really, really painful. And I
Right.
walked away from that. And in my past life, I would have said, F you, I'm out. I don't need this. You guys figure it out on your own. And I walked home and I thought, Men Worth Mentoring. That's the name of my program.
Oh, okay.
And these men are worthy of it.
Right.
And I can walk away from these young mid-30s guys, and I can abandon them, and I can just let them go on their own devices. And I said, I don't think I can do that. It's time to dig in more, give them more. And I contemplated that, shared with my wife, and she said, like, no shit. Yes, that's what that's what it's all about, Mike. And I
Right.
go, I know. So we dug in, and we dug deep with those boys, and now they already, in like the last 60 days, have just transformed their relationship, committed to their project, and had some amazing things happen in their own business that make the future look amazing, like potential. Like, now they can go, like, we can raise our young families, we can stay where we are, we can
Right.
have an opportunity, we can give back in the way we want to. And now that's possible. Everything is possible. And to know that, and have hard conversations. We went out, it's been raining, like I said, nonstop here. We went out and did an hour and a half, 2 hour walks, each guy and I and myself in the rain, and just talked about what really troubles them and where their values lie and what they need.
Right.
And we've been able to move past it
That's
into the
great.
next spot where they have optimism and potential.
Ah,
And there's none of that's paid time.
no, yeah.
That's just digging in.
No, absolutely. And it's necessary work, the digging in, paid or unpaid, I mean, that's like you're getting paid in a different way.
If only, that was the thing for me.
Yeah.
I had these patterns of relationships with
Yeah.
no man would ever have done that for me in my
Right.
life,
Right.
because I had no men in my life that I could be considered as good
Absolutely.
men who are
Absolutely.
quality mentors,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
And not at that level. I mean, there's
Right.
been people, but I never figured it out. But the men that were in my professional place where they could really have had an impact on a positive level, 100% of them stepped away, or I stepped away from them.
Right. Absolutely.
The one thing I needed was exactly what I gave those boys,
Yep.
and I gave them what I always wanted. And
And then
that's the
that's
man I want to be going
right.
forward, is a man who does that for other men.
And then the pay it forward pieces, they're going to do it for others
That's, if the lesson's strong enough, right?
if the lesson's strong enough. Yep. So the audience certainly has captured the essence of Mike Skrypnek, and they're going to want to get in touch with you, Mike. So everybody, Mike, go to his website, unlimitedworth.org. You'll find him there, or go to his link, go to LinkedIn. And I found Mike right away on LinkedIn when I just typed in Mike Skrypnek. It was easy to find him.
Not a
Weren't
lot of
many Mike
vowels
Skrypneks there. So,
there.
Mike, I want to ask you, I have two final questions. All right. So I want to give you the opportunity. You're sitting down with 7 to 10-year-old Mike, and you want to give him advice about life. What are you going to tell him?
Well, I'm gonna give him one key thing, and that is, well, a couple. You're worthy. You were born worthy. And in our lives, one of our challenges is to figure out where we're the most of value,
Mm,
right? Worth and value are very different. We're always worthy of being alive and a human being in this society and our communities, but we're not always of value. So find the place that you have the most value and lean in as hard as you can. And the other for that young man is trust you'll be okay.
mhm,
I lived an entire life of this subconscious sense that I wasn't going to be okay,
mm,
and that I couldn't trust that if my secret came out, I would be good. And so it governed me in ways that are still being unraveled. And
right.
so trust you'll be okay, because it will work out, and you have unlimited worth. So that's what I would tell
Love it.
that young man.
All right. Thank you for that. Very valuable. All right. Now you're switching gears. Now you're sitting down with a young entrepreneur, young businessman, Mike Skripnek, and you want to give him advice about business. What are you going to tell him?
Three key things. The first, of course, is that the things that you do, that you repeat, that you feel are limiting your potential, are connected to something. Who knows what that is, but it's something worth investigating with a professional and
Hmm.
sharing the information with people you love and trust only. And once you've dug in, it will remove those limitations beyond what you ever imagined. It's
Hmm.
profound. Two, the risk you perceive in bringing that secret to light or those challenges to light or those sense of limitation is multiples bigger than the risk that really exists. Your perception of that risk is completely magnified in a way that is not going to be the reality.
Hmm.
Your risk will not be that which you believe it is.
Right.
Lastly, as you've moved through this and as you've healed yourself and removed the potential or limitations on your life, you have to understand that now you have an obligation to help others identify and connect with their worth and to remove their limitations through mentorship and coaching, either through men at your peer level, men at your generational level,
Hmm.
and men from generations to come. We have an opportunity to not skip a generation before we heal ourselves. And
Hmm.
men like me, like you, Drew, have an obligation to pass this forward, to pay it forward, and make sure that we don't have to wait for generations to occur before we
Right.
fix ourselves, because we can
Love
do a
it.
lot of good.
Absolutely love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. That's great advice. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on, coming into my life. Again, I want to thank Jennifer Regular for the introduction. Please keep doing what you're doing. You're a wonderful human being and you're helping a lot of men out there who need the work you do.
Drew, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you.
Me too, Mike. Thank you. Everybody out there, please take care of yourselves. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.